Continuing on with our build today. Today we're going to tackle our throttle assembly. We'll get our front brake cable in. We'll get our wiring done. We'll go over some of those connections and a lot of the cables. So we'll do some of the controls, and we'll probably leave the port cartridges and hubs and stuff for another night. But we'll go over all the details on this, what to look out for, how you can get into trouble, and how to stay out of trouble. So we'll get into it. So I thought I'd take a minute and go over all the pieces that make up the throttle assembly on the old Trail 70 here. So we've got this cool kit that we have on our site. It's the OEM throttle assembly. It includes all the pieces that we're going to need here, including the tube. So anything that might look wore or bad is going to be in this kit here. All OEM Honda parts. So we've got our, let's call this the barrel. So this is the piece that our grip slides over top of. And then on top, or inside there, got our little retention screw. And then our mount here. And then our little cable slider block. So this will go inside the handlebar in that little machine groove that they have cut. And this piece here moves inside, is welded on part here, little helix inside there. And that's what moves the throttle in and out. We've got that. And then also, with our throttle cable assembly here, we also include the mount for the end of the cable. So this has got a unique thing here that you got to look out for when you're installing it. Is the cable goes on this side here in this little counterboard hole. If you're putting this together, the wrong way to do it would be like so. So the correct way is here, where it goes inside. You see that? The wrong way is this way. So we have this often. This is something new. If you just getting into this, or you've never taken one apart, or you took it apart so long ago that you don't quite remember, that's wrong. So what you want to do, you want to get it inside this little counterboard feature, and then tighten it up. So this is the anchor, or the mount, I guess you would call it, that's inside of the handlebar. Tight. So these are the parts and pieces. And we'll move this over to the bike. Now we're installing our cable. Now I had previously installed the horn in some of my earlier videos, and I forgot how much of a bear that is to put the cable through here. So I went ahead and I've already taken the screw out of the horn and taken it out of the handlebar itself. So now I don't have any obstructions to get through there. And I can look where this has got to go. So now I've got that in. The next piece, after that, is our, call it the cable mount or stay bracket. So this is the piece here that gets screwed in through the handlebar. So they've got this really tight in here. You're struggling with it. Everybody is struggling with it. So you're just not alone. We're going to pull that back, drop that in here. We will monkey with this grommet off camera because that's sometimes hard to get in there. And we'll remount this later. But all right, now that we've got that in, onto our little mount thing here. So now this one has a screw that goes through the bottom. So we've got a little hole here. And we've got it's really a special little fastener. So What it does is it mounts this piece here, which is pretty much like a throttle stop, and it also keeps the next part in line that I'll show you here. So we'll get this in. It's nice to have a little pick around or something to get this cable up to you. All right, so we'll put that in. And the tube. So there's a little bit of debate here. I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab a little bit of grease to grease this up, just to keep it from it's not a metal-on-metal contact. And then the helical thing I was talking about, which is inside of the tube, you can see these spot welds. Well, that is the location of that, and that's what actually drives this piece back and forth. So that'll mount on here like so. And then this screw, once I turn this in the right orientation, will screw through here into the throttle bracket, and that'll complete the assembly. So here right now, you can see that I'm actuating the throttle, and that's the install. So I'm going to get this, lube this up a little bit, and we'll put that screw up through the bottom, and that is essentially it for your throttle. Now this isn't meant to be, like, there's so much drag on here, so it's not like a, let's just call it like a motocross throttle or regular motorcycle throttle to where it actually has a snap back feature. You pretty much got cruise control built into it in these old bikes, so you can get it to move back and forth a little bit, depending, like, especially if you put an aftermarket motor in here and a carburetor, which we are going to have to figure out that assembly, but that may pull it back a lot more. But if your throttle doesn't snap back, you did install it correctly. All right, we'll lube it up, and that'll complete the install on this side. The one thing, putting the screw in can be kind of a nightmare. So what I like to do is get a little pick or awl here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put that inside here, and I'm going to line up that throttle cable mount. I can see the threads. I've got my ring here. I've got that hole aligned. And we have a slotted hole on our barrel. So that has to go around this screw. We'll get that started. There we go. This is probably a really easy one to cross thread, so be careful. If you feel a little resistance, I would back off and wiggle these parts around and try again. I am getting a little right here too. Double check where I'm at. Go. That's better. So what I was feeling was I was feeling a lot of resistance. It was almost like a hard spot. So I think what happened is I was able to start maybe a thread, but the throttle mount, I think, was crooked. So what I did is I tried to align it with that pick that I had, and I was looking down inside the handlebar, and I could see it jump and move. So now, good and tight. Now you gotta be careful because you can strip these out. It's like a little magnesium part, but right there, throttle. I'll go ahead and we'll put our horn back together. Pull that line through. And that will conclude this.
What?
On to our grips. Now there is a throttle side and a non-throttle side. You could easily, one, look at the OEM part numbers and apply that to the exploded views and see which one it is. But also, the throttle side is really, really easily squishy. So it's thicker here. That's going to go on your left hand. And it's a lot thinner to go over that whole assembly we just showed, the whole barrel piece on the right-hand side. So before we do that, we want to make sure we've got our handlebars and pieces 100% free from grease. any oil, so that way our grips want to stick on there real good. You can use a grip glue if you'd like to. If I remember right, the last time I did this, we didn't quite need it. It's not like we're doing hardcore single tracks or motocross anyways. Get that all cleaned up, no oils. Okay, so we're gonna give this a little shot here. So the problem with the Trail 70 handlebars is it's hard to use the air nozzle trick to get these on and off. But what I have found is if you get some little parts brake cleaner and you kind of got a limited amount of time until this stuff evaporates and then it's on. So we're going to spray this lightly and we're going to give it a shot. And here we go. On. So I can see that parts brake cleaner evaporating almost instantly. And it is tight grip. So one little trick you can try to put the grip on, and we'll move over to the throttle side and we'll try the same trick. Fail. Installed. We're going to go show one side of this because both sides are identical, but we've got a really cool kit we have here, a little assembly. We've got our two fasteners that we're going to need to put our cable on and our lever. So we've kind of got like a little shoulder boat looking piece here, and then we've got our nut here that goes on the back side. So this will go right through the lever here into the cable. But check this part out on our website. We've got the OEM handlebar pivot assembly. So find that one and we'll go ahead and put this one on. All right, so we've got our levers here. We've got our left and our right. Now there is a left and the right, just based on what side the cable end mounts to. So here we've got this side, the right side. We will start our bolt into the handlebar. Through here. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and tighten this one down, and then we're going to lock it in place with this little jam nut. So the handlebar perch lever here is threaded on the back side and is captured with one backup washer, or nut rather, on the back side of that. What that does, it just keeps it from rattling out. So I'm going to go find my little itty bitty wrench to put that in, but that is the installation of a lever and the parts and pieces you need to be able to put it together. We've got our final piece for tonight. We are going to wire in our front brake switch. So I went ahead and just threw it in the perch. Previous in the video, we went through how to put the levers on. Those are pretty straightforward. Now we've got to do our electrical connection. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take this off. I just got this one finger tight. And we're going to make our final connections up in the headlight bucket. Put this off to the side so we're not wrecking it. And we'll snake this through in the back. And then I'll get my diagram out and I will start to figure out where these got to be plugged into. Okay, so we've got our mess of wires. So I think what I'll do is I'll go through the connections on this in a second, just to kind of give you an example of how this bike was wired up here. So let me go get my schematic. Now that's your key to what color and functions get plugged into our aftermarket harness. So what we're deciphering from this is we've got our aftermarket harness that we have in the frame of the bike, and then we've got our OEM plugs and pieces here. We've got our headlight, and we've got our speedometer. We've got our backlight, and then our high beam indicator light. And we also need to wire in these two plugs right here, which are our brake switch for the taillight. I'm gonna go get my key and we're gonna figure this out. So I grabbed our schematic. So I went ahead and printed off the OEM wire harness that would be in this bike. That'll have all of our functions here for our headlight and our high-low switch, horn, all the stuff that we need to know how to plug it into the junction. Now again, I'm using the simple harness, TB515. Again, here has all my functions and what colors they are. And between the two, that's where I'm going to go ahead and figure out which colors I have for my OEM that needs to go to whatever color I have in my my wire harness here. So we're going to kind of go from, just say in the headlight bucket here, from left to right, in as much order as I can give it. I did kind of give myself some little cheat notes here on my particular wiring that I'm doing here. So for our far left on our speedometer, that is the function for the high beam. So that plugs in here to our pigtail that goes to our headlight. So that would be blue. So from our blue here to blue to the headlight. And then we've got also, this is an easy one, blue coming out of our high-low switch here. Now, the next one, I guess since I already have this in my hand, is we've got our headlight. So we've got green would be next here. So this goes into a little jumper Y into the main harness. So this one particular one is going to be green to green. And then what jumps off of this is I believe it's the green. Yeah, so that would be our our backlight to our speedometer. So that's kind of like our our running light, kind of the illumination in the back. And then our next one we have in our pigtail here is our white. So the white here is going to our, it's kind of probably hard to see this. So we've got our high-low beam switch snaked into here to where we've got 3 colored wires coming out of it. So on our high-low beam switch, we already went over the blue. We also have our white. Our white goes to white. And then we've got a brown with a red stripe that is coming out of the main harness here, which plugs into, there we go, into our running light there. So the next connection is going to be our headlight main. So in our wire harness, yellow is our headlight main power. So this is going to go into the blue with it, or excuse me, a brown with a red stripe. So now this is only going to give us power when the motor is running. So there's no way we can troubleshoot this guy here. The only other wire that I know that's hot all the time when the key switch is on, that should be brown. So if there's any browns in here, here's a brown. Yep, the brown here will be a power. So if you wanted to jump from, instead of plugging your yellow into here, you could, or excuse me, your brown, you could plug your yellow in there and kind of give it a little test shot. But yellow is our headlight main switch, and that runs off of the motor. So again, the motor needs to be running for that to work. And then we went through our headlight. It's kind of once you lay it out and you've kind of got your functions, I made myself a nice little cheat sheet here that I can go through and figure out how now this changes from year to year, not necessarily the headlight, but some of the wire, and it also changes too on whatever. So we're using an aftermarket harness here that works with the 12-volt system and the 12-volt motor. But my next plug that we'll go through is the brake light switch. So we already got our horn hooked up. It's one I did not cover. So we've got our horn wire, which is gray. That's going to go to a light green. That'll be our horn switch. Let's see here. Now this are our plugs for our brake light. So we've got a red coming out from our switch, and that is going to have to get plugged into black. Plug that into black. And then we've got our green here with a yellow stripe. So the green with the yellow stripe, if I remember correctly, is going to have to plug into this part here, which is a green with a yellow stripe. But it looks like I've got two female connections here. So I've got our OEM parts, and this is one thing you're probably going to run into. So if I remember correctly, the aftermarket bikes have barrels coming out of the controllers. And this is where you kind of got to do a little bit of altering. I'll probably just make myself a little jumper wire with two male ends. Then I can plug that in right into this. I don't have to necessarily cut up anything. I just make myself a little jumper and plug that in. Now, it is okay to have extra wires that you are not using, because other years have different options. So like, let's say this particular bike does not have a high-low beam, or excuse me, a neutral safety light that comes on. So that'd be one here that it's not going to be plugged in anything, because we just don't have that in this model. And everything else looks like it's actually plugged in. We might have an extra black. If I remember right, black is also hot with the key switch on. But that concludes what we have. I'm going to go ahead and make myself a little jumper here to be able to finish my wiring on my in my little headlight junction box. Now I'm going to go ahead and off camera, I'll put the headlight back in, and I'll make sure I get these all nested nicely, so that way when I go to put my headlight in, like here, we won't unplug anything, we won't be smashing any wires. Well, we wrapped up our wiring in the headlight bucket. Now next week we'll be on to our taillight and our taillight bracket. We got some OEM parts and pieces that we're going to use with our aftermarket taillight bracket, which is a pretty nice piece for the price. And we'll finish our plugging here. I need to fix some stuff that I wrecked earlier, but hope this was informative. If you like what you see, you can find more of these parts on mytrailbuddy.com.